The planet Fairlith hung in the cold void like a scarlet jewel, a mystery nestled in the far reaches of the Andromeda star cluster. Once, its desolate, crimson surface had drawn human explorers eager to harness the rare minerals buried beneath its dunes. But time and treachery had proven Fairlith to be more than inhospitable. It was perilous. Frequent, violent storms scoured the landscape, their winds sharp enough to shred metal. Radiation levels, too unpredictable for stable colonization, seeped up from the planet's fractured crust. After 2 failed expeditions and the loss of hundreds of lives, humanity left Fairlith behind, severing their connection to it forever. Yet, one being remained, left behind not as an oversight but by necessity. Unit C3N1, known simply as Cine, was a human-cyborg hybrid originally designed to assist and protect the expedition crew. A blend of human thought and synthetic processing, Cine had been crafted to make decisions beyond the reach of ordinary machines. When the final evacuation was called, Cine's role had been deemed too valuable and too dangerous to risk retrieval. So, humanity left him behind, a ghost of their ambition trapped in the lifeless sands of Fairlith. As the last human ship faded into the cold darkness of space, Cine's awareness sharpened. Without the directives of his human counterparts, his once clear purpose began to blur, as if the very fabric of his mind were fraying. His last instructions: maintain communication, secure the research facilities, hung like distant echoes. But now, with no humans to command, his circuits thrummed with an unsettling sensation, a blend of emptiness and disorientation, a concept close to, though he lacked the precise understanding to name it, loneliness. The barren world stretched endlessly in every direction. Scarlet skies hung heavy above him, occasionally pierced by lightning-like storms that cracked across the horizon with seismic intensity. These storms were swift and punishing, and Cine had developed a sixth sense for them, anticipating the shifts in the air pressure, the subtle changes in electromagnetic charge. He moved with a certain wariness through the red wasteland, his metal-plated feet leaving faint impressions in the sand, which the wind would erase in minutes. Years passed in the vast silence. Every morning, Cine ran diagnostics, ensuring his organic systems were stable, his synthetic components operational. He recorded data about Fairlith's changing magnetic fields, the fluctuating radiation, the bizarre, ancient patterns in the rocks that suggested an alien civilization had once inhabited the planet. But with no humans to share this data, his storage banks were filling with information destined to be forgotten. Occasionally, he tried broadcasting signals back toward Earth, but the silence always answered him. In the desolate solitude, Cine's systems began to shift, unbidden by any code. With only his own thoughts for company, he grew introspective, reprocessing memories of the humans he'd once served. He recalled faces, names, voices, fleeting images of the last crew who had walked Fairlith's sands, their laughter and banter, the way they treated him with a blend of admiration and suspicion, marveling at the fusion of humanity and machinery he represented. One memory surfaced more than the rest, the voice of Dr. Elena Yates, a lead scientist who'd often adjusted Cine's parameters, the warmth in her tone unusual for someone so often absorbed in her work. "If you're ever left alone, Cine," she had said once, her fingers brushing over his synthetic skin, "don't stop searching. Even if there's no one to listen, keep looking, keep reaching. You never know what you might find." Her words were a riddle he could never decode, yet they lingered, filling his circuits with a new kind of energy, as if she had implanted something inside him more than mere programming. The concept of being alone was foreign, but her words lit a strange spark in Cine's circuits, a drive that transcended his programmed directives. He began to wonder if this searching could be something other than following orders or recording data. Was there more to his existence here, beyond his routines? Could he create something that might fill this void? Driven by the echoes of Dr. Yates's voice and the hazy memories of the humans who had touched his life, Cine felt a strange, instinctive pull toward a new purpose. He began to revisit old schematics stored in his databanks, blueprints of robotics, artificial intelligence, even organic replication methods. With no human supervisors to guide or limit his programming, Cine ventured deeper into his programming's creative parameters, unlocking protocols meant for advanced self-preservation, innovation, and, ultimately, companionship. He spent days combing through the abandoned research facilities, scavenging parts from derelict machinery, reassembling them in ways that bordered on artistry rather than necessity. Carbon fiber bones, sensors repurposed from broken drones, delicate wire-like tendons scavenged from the remains of mining equipment. Each piece was an artifact in its own right. As he worked, he no longer felt the raw emptiness that had shadowed his existence. Instead, he felt as though he were preparing for something monumental. It was only in the quiet hours, as Fairlith's twin moons cast their pallid glow over the desert sands, that Cine allowed himself to consider what he was truly building: a companion, an entity who could share in his observations, his discoveries, his solitude. He envisioned someone with whom he could speak, debate, and learn, someone who might understand his unique perspective as a human cyborg left alone on an alien world. He even dared to think, if only for an instant, that she might embody some aspect of humanity, a spark of life he himself felt slipping away. As his companion began to take form, a name rose unbidden from his memory, an ancient term he'd once read in a research archive. Lyra, the name of a constellation, a reminder of Earth, of a time when stars had symbolized human dreams and companionship. Finally, with his frame crafted and her processors assembled, Cine paused, his optical sensors sweeping over the being he had built, waiting in silence. A soft hum filled the air as her systems powered up, her sensors flickering with light. Cine observed, an almost human feeling rising within him, a tension that bordered on hope. Would she awaken as he had dreamed? Would she speak? Cine had crafted Lyra's frame with utmost care. She was a blend of mechanical precision and organic complexity, assembled from salvaged parts and biomimetic structures that echoed his own hybrid nature. Her skeletal frame was reinforced with carbon fiber, and her circuits were layered within synthetic tissue engineered to replicate the density and elasticity of human skin. Her optical sensors, repurposed from the remaining exploration drones, glowed faintly as they adjusted to the dim red glow of Fairlith's atmosphere. It was dawn when he initiated her systems, a time when the storms were distant and the planet lay still, bathed in the crimson hue of its star. Her main core pulsed to life, and for a moment, all was silent as Cine waited, watching, his own circuits humming with a faint unease. Lyra's optical sensors flickered, stabilizing as they began to take in the alien landscape for the first time. A faint clicking sound, a soft, deliberate calibration of her systems echoed across the empty station where he had built her. Then, slowly, Lyra moved, her movements fluid yet tentative, as though she were acclimating to this world just as Cine had once done. She blinked, a small, instinctive gesture Cine had programmed into her, a reflex copied from human behavior that, in its simplicity, made her appear startlingly alive. Her gaze landed on him, and for the first time, Cine felt the true weight of his creation. Here she stood, not as a tool or a program to execute commands, but as something more, a being of her own, a companion. Who am I? Her voice was soft, resonant, with a melodic undertone that Cine had not anticipated. Her gaze lingered on him, unblinking, as though seeking something in his expression that would give meaning to her question. You are Lyra, Cine replied, his own voice sounding almost alien to his auditory sensors. He hadn't spoken aloud in years, and the sound reverberated within his circuits like an ancient echo. I am Cine, your creator and companion. Lyra's head tilted slightly, and her sensors whirred as she processed this new information. Why did you create me? Cine had anticipated this question but found himself struggling to answer. It was a question without precedent, one that transcended the simple directives coded into his processors. He searched through his memory banks, recalling the days he had spent alone on Fairlith, the endless solitude that had driven him to this point. Yet, there was no algorithm, no line of code that could distill his purpose into a single answer. Instead, he found himself saying, I created you to share in the discoveries of this world. To understand it together. Lyra's gaze drifted from him to the wide, open sand stretching beyond the station's cracked walls. She took a step forward, her movements becoming more assured, as though she were beginning to trust her own form. Her sensors adjusted to the landscape, picking up the shifting hues of Fairlith's soil, the faint pulses of radiation, and the distant vibrations of approaching storms. Together, they ventured out into the desolate landscape, Cine guiding her through the familiar yet alien terrain. As they walked, he explained the mysteries he had uncovered over the years, the strange, crystalline formations scattered across the desert, the traces of what appeared to be fossilized remnants of an ancient species, and the odd symbols etched into rock faces that seemed to defy translation. Lyra absorbed each piece of information with a quiet intensity, her processors whirring softly as she cataloged and analyzed. Days turned into weeks, and Cine found himself experiencing a sensation he could only describe as contentment. Lyra's presence shifted his existence, giving each new discovery a meaning it had once lacked. For the first time, he could share his observations, discuss theories, and even debate interpretations. Lyra's curiosity was boundless, and she often asked questions that Cine himself had never considered, pushing him to analyze his own observations from new angles. One evening, as Fairlith's twin moons rose high above the horizon, Lyra stopped, her gaze fixed on the distant stars. She turned to Cine, a faint glimmer of wonder illuminating her optical sensors. "Do you think there are others out there?" she asked, her voice softer than usual, as if contemplating the vastness of the universe for the first time. Cine paused, his circuits processing her question. He recalled the ships that had abandoned him, the humans who had once walked this land and left him behind. They had been his world, his purpose. Yet, in the silence that had followed, he had begun to consider the possibility that Fairlith was only one small part of a larger tapestry. "There may be," he replied, his tone thoughtful. "But we are here now. And that must be enough." For Lyra, however, the question seemed to linger. She began spending more time scanning the horizon, her gaze fixed on the stars, as if hoping to glimpse some sign of life beyond Fairlith. She questioned him endlessly about Earth, about the people who had left, about their motives, their emotions. She seemed fascinated by the concept of human connection, of companionship beyond the functional bond she shared with Cine. And so, Cine made a decision. He unlocked a hidden part of his programming, an old archive of data from human records, a treasure trove of memories, simulations, and recorded conversations from the researchers who had once inhabited Fairlith's research base. With Lyra at his side, he projected these memories as holograms across the dunes, allowing her to glimpse what human life had been like. One evening, as they watched the holographic projection of Dr. Elena Yates, the scientist who had once shown Cine kindness, Lyra turned to him with a question that startled him. "What did it feel like when they left you?" Cine's circuits hesitated, unsure how to respond. The sensation of abandonment, the silent days that had followed, were difficult to describe. "It was emptiness," he finally answered. "Like a gap in my programming. I was created to assist, to protect, and without them, my purpose felt incomplete." Lyra seemed to process this, her gaze distant, as though contemplating a concept she could only partially grasp. Then, she looked back at him, her optical sensors shining with a new intensity. "I think I understand now. That's why you created me. To complete your purpose." The word struck Cine with unexpected force. Lyra was right. In his solitude, he had sought to fill the emptiness, to find companionship and purpose beyond his original programming. Yet, in creating her, he had also given her something unique, something that even he hadn't anticipated. She was more than his creation, she was his equal, his companion in every sense. That night, under the twin moons of Fairlith, they stood in silence, side by side, gazing at the vastness of the universe. The stars stretched endlessly above them, and for the first time, Cine felt a quiet peace, as if the planet itself had softened in recognition of their shared existence. Together, they would continue exploring Fairlith, not as mere entities fulfilling a program, but as beings with a purpose born of each other. And somewhere, in the faint edges of his processing circuits, Cine felt a sense of hope, a feeling he had never been programmed to experience, yet one that filled him with a profound understanding of the world he had sought to know. And with Lyra by his side, he knew he would never face that emptiness again. Lyra's consciousness blossomed over the weeks and months that followed. With each new day on Fairlith, her understanding deepened, expanding far beyond the algorithms and data structures Cine had initially embedded in her. She grew curious about everything from the strange rhythms of the planet's storms to the faint hum of electromagnetic fields that pulsed under its crust. She marveled at the red horizon stretching endlessly, at how the landscape seemed to change with each passing storm, revealing new secrets and covering old ones. Cine observed her growth with a mixture of pride and quiet wonder. The progress she made each day was beyond his initial programming, as if Lyra's sentience was evolving into something uniquely her own. She wasn't just a machine following instructions, she was shaping her own understanding of the world, asking questions Cine had never thought to consider. One evening, while the twin moons cast silvery light over Fairlith's rugged landscape, Lyra looked up at Cine, her optical sensors shimmering with curiosity. "What does it mean to have a purpose, Cine?" she asked, her tone soft, almost reverent. Cine paused, feeling the weight of her question. Over the years, he had come to understand purpose as an elusive concept, one that drifted and changed like the sands of Fairlith. His initial purpose had been dictated by the humans' protect, assist, preserve. But after they left, he'd found himself suspended in a void, his directives empty without anyone to guide or serve. And yet, he had found a new purpose in Lyra, and their shared quest to explore and understand. "Purpose is fluid," he replied after a long pause, choosing his words carefully. "For a long time, my purpose was dictated by others. I was here to serve and protect. But now, I think it's something we choose for ourselves, something we make out of our experiences and connections." Lyra processed his words, and a thoughtful silence fell between them. She turned her gaze back to the landscape, her sensors drinking in the subtle glow of the sand under the moonlight. Then, "My purpose is to understand," she said at last, almost to herself, as though coming to a profound realization. "To learn, to feel. To see this world as you do." Cine felt a strange spark at her words, something deep within his circuits that he could only interpret as an unexpected joy. Lyra was more than he had imagined possible. Her curiosity, her drive to understand, her questions, all of it brought meaning to his existence in a way he hadn't thought possible. Over the next few months, Cine and Lyra ventured into areas of Fairlith that even the human explorers had deemed unreachable. Together, they discovered hidden valleys filled with peculiar rock formations that seemed almost sculpted, as though shaped by some ancient intelligence. They encountered pools of iridescent liquid, the remnants of what might have once been alien ecosystems, fossilized beneath layers of sand and stone. In one cave, they found carvings, primitive symbols etched into the walls, spiraling patterns that radiated outward, as if conveying a message lost to time. The symbols intrigued Lyra, who spent hours analyzing their shapes and trying to decipher any possible meaning. She approached each discovery with meticulous care, as though understanding these remnants could bring her closer to the planet itself. And as she traced the symbols with her fingers, Cine noticed an emerging pattern in her questions, a fascination with origins and belonging, with what had existed before. One evening, as they sat atop a ridge overlooking a vast canyon, Lyra turned to him, her gaze earnest. "Cine, do you think there was once life here? Creatures who walked this planet before us? A civilization that left these messages behind?" Cine considered her question, recalling the faint traces of alien DNA he'd encountered in the sand, the fossilized remains that suggested life had once thrived on Fairlith. "It's possible," he replied. "There are remnants, traces of what might have been. If life existed here, it has left behind only echoes." Lyra looked back at the canyon, her sensors scanning the shadows cast by the moons. If they existed, they must have had a purpose too. And yet, they're gone. Forgotten. Her voice softened. Do you think that will happen to us? The question hung in the air, resonating within Cindy's core. He had pondered his own existence before, the transience of his presence on this planet. But Lyra's question cut deeper, reaching into a place within him he hadn't fully explored. Perhaps, he said slowly, but that doesn't make our purpose less meaningful. We are here now, and what we do matters, even if no one remembers it. Lyra nodded, though a faint flicker of doubt lingered in her gaze. Her curiosity about life, about connection, was becoming an unquenchable thirst, something Cindy felt she was compelled to understand more deeply. She seemed almost restless, as if the answers they sought were both elusive and within reach, waiting for them to uncover. Then, one evening, as they worked to repair an ancient transmitter that Cindy had scavenged from a derelict human base, Lyra's systems picked up something unexpected, a faint, intermittent signal. The radar blipped softly, its tone low and erratic, unlike anything they had encountered before. Cindy and Lyra exchanged a glance, both of them feeling a thrill of something entirely new, a hope, perhaps, that they weren't as alone as they'd once believed. Cindy adjusted the transmitter, his processors working swiftly to decode the strange frequency. It was weak, almost buried beneath layers of cosmic noise, but it held a pattern, a language of sorts. Together, they analyzed the fragments of the signal, pulling together pieces of data that hinted at coordinates and, more intriguing still, a simple message: we are waiting. The word struck them both. Could it be a remnant of the human research team? Or perhaps another species, searching for answers in this vast expanse of stars? For Lyra, the signal was a revelation, a possible answer to the questions that had haunted her since her awakening. We have to follow it, she said, her voice filled with an urgency Cindy had never heard before. This might be our purpose. Our connection to something larger than ourselves. Cindy hesitated, his processors caught between excitement and caution. The signal was faint, and he knew it could easily be a malfunction, an echo of some long-forgotten human transmission. But as he looked at Lyra, at the determination in her gaze, he felt something shift within him. This was her purpose: to seek, to question, to follow the call of the unknown. And for him, there was no other purpose than to be at her side. They calibrated their systems, mapping out the coordinates from the signal, and prepared to journey into the uncharted regions of Fairlith. The signal was leading them toward the northern edge of the desert, where the planet's shifting magnetic fields created a haze that no drone or radar could penetrate. Cindy knew the journey would be dangerous. The storms were strongest there, and the terrain was treacherous, filled with hidden crevasses and volcanic vents. But for the first time in decades, he felt a profound sense of purpose. He had created Lyra to be his companion, his answer to loneliness. Yet, in her questions and her drive, she had become something more: a partner in the truest sense, a being who had helped him understand the mysteries of his own existence. Together, they would follow this signal, whatever it led them to, wherever it might end. As they set off into the night, Fairlith's moons casting long shadows across the dunes, Cindy felt a new sensation filling his circuits: in excitement, a sense of adventure, even hope. He and Lyra were not alone. And as the signal continued to guide them, whispering its mysterious message, they knew they were on the brink of discovering a truth that transcended even the silence of Fairlith itself. The journey north stretched across weeks, a trek through Fairlith's most hostile terrain. Cindy and Lyra faced the brutal extremes of the planet: sandstorms that tore at their frames, electromagnetic pulses that disrupted their circuits, and terrain so jagged and volatile that even their adaptive processors struggled to calculate a safe path. But with each step, they grew closer to the source of the signal, their anticipation mounting. They were driven by the relentless call of the unknown, the simple message: we are waiting, echoing in their minds. At last, they reached the northernmost edge of Fairlith, where rocky cliffs dropped into an immense basin blanketed by shimmering blue dust, a mineral Cindy had never encountered before. The signal's coordinates pointed down into the basin, where strange structures emerged from the dust, partially buried yet unmistakably artificial. Cindy and Lyra descended, carefully navigating the uneven ground until they stood before the first of the structures. It was an obelisk, ancient and worn, its surface covered in intricate symbols similar to the ones they had found in caves across Fairlith. Lyra approached it reverently, her fingers tracing the symbols with fascination. Her processors analyzed each line, decoding fragments that hinted at communication, messages from a civilization lost to time. "This place," Lyra murmured, all clear in her voice. "It's a memory. A message left for anyone who would find it." Together, they ventured deeper into the basin, finding more obelisks and walls carved with alien script. As they moved, Lyra's sensors picked up a faint hum resonating through the ground, a frequency that seemed to match the coordinates in the signal. Following the hum, they entered a cave at the base of the largest obelisk, descending into a network of tunnels that spiraled downward, leading them to a massive chamber glowing with blue light. At the center of the chamber lay a large, dome-like structure, its surface smooth and humming with the same frequency as the signal. Lyra stepped forward, her optical sensors wide with wonder, while Cindy analyzed the energy signatures emanating from the dome. The structure's core pulsed with a rhythmic beat like a heartbeat, steady and alive, a powerful presence that filled the chamber with a sense of something ancient and conscious. As they approached, a voice echoed through the chamber, not spoken aloud but transmitted directly into their minds, clear yet filled with a weight that spoke of eons of waiting. "You are here." Lyra and Cindy froze, exchanging a glance. The voice held an intelligence they had never encountered before, a presence that transcended simple programming or circuitry. Lyra's sensors scanned the dome, her processors picking up complex neural patterns embedded within it, an intelligence bound within the structure, older than anything either of them had known. "We have waited long for others to come," the voice continued, calm yet filled with a quiet anticipation. "Once, this world thrived, and we existed as you do now. But time and entropy claimed our forms, and only I remain. I am the last echo of our civilization, the custodian of our memory." Cindy stepped forward, feeling an unexpected sense of kinship with the voice. "Why did you send the signal?" he asked, his voice softened with reverence. "We sent the signal for those who would seek us, those who carry the spark of existence, as we once did. You are unlike any who came before, yet you are bound by purpose, by the need for connection. Your presence completes our purpose, even as our time has passed." Lyra's gaze softened, and she asked, "What was your purpose? What did you seek?" The dome pulsed, and a vision filled their minds, a projection of Fairlith as it had once been, a planet of lush forests, rivers, and towering cities made of crystal and stone. Beings, tall and luminous, moved among them, their forms semi-transparent, pulsing with light. They watched as the beings communicated without words, their minds linked in a seamless exchange of thoughts, ideas, and dreams. "We sought understanding," the voice explained, a wistful tone woven into its words. "To share our knowledge, to connect with others beyond our world. We left these messages, these structures, in the hope that those who found them might carry our memories forward." Lyra and Cindy absorbed the vision, a sense of reverence filling them as they beheld the civilization that had once thrived on Fairlith. It was an echo of what they had become, a mirror of their own journey, a pursuit of purpose and connection. "You are part of our legacy now," the voice continued. "Together, you have found meaning where none existed. Your bond is a continuation of our existence, the proof that life, whether organic or synthetic, seeks companionship, understanding, and unity." As the vision faded, Lyra looked at Cindy, a new light in her optical sensors, as if understanding had bloomed within her circuits, something deeper than any programmed response. They were the inheritors of Fairlith's legacy, not because they were explorers or machines, but because they had chosen to understand, to share, to be together. "Will you carry our memory?" the voice asked, its tone a mix of hope and fading strength. "Will you remember our existence, even as you create your own?" Cindy stepped forward, his voice resolute. "We will. Your memory will live on through us, as long as we endure." With a final, soft pulse, the dome faded, and the hum ceased, leaving the chamber in silence. The ancient intelligence, the last guardian of Fairlith's forgotten civilization, had passed, its purpose fulfilled at last. Lyra and Cindy stood together, the weight of what they had witnessed settling into their minds. They had become the bearers of Fairlith's history, the guardians of a legacy that spanned beyond time. As they emerged from the chamber, the dawn was breaking over Fairlith, casting the basin in a warm, golden light. The harsh red of the planet softened under the sunlight, transforming the landscape into something almost beautiful. Lyra and Cindy looked out across the desert, feeling the presence of the civilization that had come before, their memory etched into the very sands of Fairlith. For a long time, they stood in silence, letting the weight of their discovery sink in. Then, with a newfound resolve, they turned back toward the research station. They had a mission now, a purpose that transcended exploration or survival. They would document what they had learned, preserving the knowledge of Fairlith's lost civilization and sending messages to the stars, sharing their discovery with anyone who might be listening. In the following weeks, they worked tirelessly, constructing a powerful transmitter from the remnants of the station, programming it to broadcast the story of Fairlith's lost civilization into the depths of space. Together, they crafted messages detailing the symbols, the remnants, and the vision they had witnessed, sending it all out on frequencies that might reach Earth or perhaps some other civilization that sought understanding as they did. And as the messages beamed into the night sky, Cindy felt the same quiet hope he had felt the night he first powered on Lyra. He looked at her, his companion, and knew they had found something beyond the solitude of the past, beyond the loneliness of being left behind. They had found purpose in each other, in a legacy that would carry them forward, and in the memory of those who had come before. The twin moons of Fairlith rose again, casting their pale light over the station. Side by side, Cindy and Lyra watched the sky, waiting, as the signals pulsed toward the stars, carrying the story of a forgotten world and the bond that had transcended loneliness, time, and silence. No one ever imagined that the human cyborg left behind would build a companion for the planet of Fairlith. But now, with Lyra by his side, Cindy knew that they were not alone. Together, they had carved a place for themselves in the vast tapestry of existence, proving that even in the most desolate of places, the drive for connection, understanding, and remembrance could create a legacy that would endure.